approaching the last days, but that's still the second sign. Jesus said we're headed for worldwide people. We're living the last days. Is across the world you see the increase of what? Families. Let's take a look at that text back in Matthew 24. Read it with your own eyes, folks. Matthew 24, verse 3, 7, and 8. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately, asked the question you and I should be asking. Hello. Tell us, they said, when will all this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the what? In the age. He says there's going to be what? Not just earthquakes. There's going to be famines and earthquakes in various places. And all these are just the beginning, folks, of your worst nightmare. The beginning of birth pains. Folks, again, the scoffer's going to take a look at this passage. They're going to do the same thing with the earthquakes. What are they going to say? Famine, schmamine. Some of you guys know what schmamine is. I don't either, but it works. Okay, famine, schmamine. Okay, come on. So what? So what, Christian? Take a history class again. Okay? We've always had famines. We've always had diseases, and granted, folks, that's true, but guess what? Not on the scale that we see today. People of God, wake up. In the last century alone, we've seen an explosion of worldwide disease and pestilence like never before in the history of mankind. Get this, the World Health Organization right now estimates that 1/3 of the world, right now, 1/3 is well-fed, i.e. you and I. Right now, another third is underfed. Get this, right now, across our planet, 1/3 of the earth is starving to death. You get it? That's never happened before. 1/3 of the earth in our technological, medically advanced era is starving to death. Right now. Get this, folks. Just in the 1990s alone, 100 million children starved to death. 1/3 of the United States wiped out. Just kidding. That's never happened before. And folks, get this. A total of 4 million people are going to die this year alone. And by the time you're done listening to this sermon, another 200 people will be swept out. But wait, it's the question that. The question's got to be this. I mean, come on. This is mankind. We don't need God. Like, we live in the most technological advanced era ever. How can this happen? How can there be such worldwide famine? Well, some of the reasons why are caused by war. We'll get to that in a second. Embargoes, government corruption, and economic debt. Get this, but it just so happens we live in a day and age there will be a rise of this group of people called environmentalists. And because they worship the earth, they have been, with all the restrictions, they've stirred up a restriction on something just as simple as something called a fertilizer. And because of that, right now, folks, 12,000 square miles of Africa is turning to desert. Doesn't sound like you're saving the earth to me. And speaking of desert, folks, the Africans right now are no longer the only ones with this problem. Get this, the Chinese are. No wonder they want some more territory, in my opinion. China right now is losing 4,000 square miles of land every year to desert. And 1/3 of the total land mass right now is covered with desert in the form of massive sand dunes. In fact, folks, throughout the world, a land area bigger than the size of Texas is becoming deserts every single year. And no matter what people are trying to do to reverse it, it won't stop. The deserts keep coming, and so guess what? So will the famine. Exactly what Jesus said would happen when? In the last days. But that's not all. Jesus is very replete. He gives us many opportunities. The third sign to indicate we're headed for worldwide people. He said there's going to be an increase of what? Pestilence. Pestilence in the last days. Let's take a look at the parallel passage of Matthew 24. In Luke 21, Jesus is saying the same thing, but he brings out a different nugget this time. Luke 21, verse 7 through 11 says this, Teacher, they ask, when will these things happen? And what will be the signs that are about to take place? Well, Jesus says, of course, it's going to be what? Great earthquakes, okay? There's going to be famines and what? Pestilence in various places and fearful events, great signs from heaven. I don't even have time to get into that one. No, again, folks, I think you're starting to see the pattern here. What's the scoffer going to do with this one? Oh, come on, pestilence. What's the big deal? Come on. We've always had pestilence. There's all kinds of black plague and all this stuff, influenza and so on. We've always had diseases to deal with, right? But people not on the scale we have to deal with today. People of God, wake up. In the last century alone, we've seen nothing but an explosion of worldwide pestilence and diseases like never before. Get this by way of how obtuse it is. Listen, as recent as 1979, the U.S. Surgeon General made this a bold statement. They said, quote, it is time to close the books on infectious diseases. Was he right? Are you kidding me, folks? By the 1990s, instead of fading out of existence, infectious diseases have gone ballistic. We've all heard about the AIDS issue. daily? Did you know that in 1998 the combined wars in Africa killed 200,000 people from wars? But AIDS killed 10 times more than that? Wake up, Christian teenager! Did you realize that 75% of HIV infections is now being spread heterosexual contact? But people, AIDS is not the half of it. Here's the point. Diseases that they thought once were conquered, such as tuberculosis and malaria and cholera and diphtheria and even the Black Plague, folks, wake up! They're coming back, and they're coming back with a vengeance. Can't stop them. But the question is, wait a second, come on, this is mankind. I mean, we're just going to sail through the stars like Star Trek. We're going to be our own God. We're going to create our own society, utopia. How can this be? We're living in the age of the most medically advanced era ever. How can this happen? Well, believe it or not, folks, a lot of that is due to scientific experimentation. It's also due to biological warfare. But get this, thank you, pharmaceutical companies. It's actually due to an overuse of antibiotics. Pay attention, folks. This is the days we live in. This is only happening in our lifetime. Because we have saturated ourselves, like the pharmaceutical companies have told us to, with so many antibiotics, the diseases are now mutating. And they're becoming resistant to all known medication. And this has alarmed the medical community so much so, they've stated, quote, the emergence of bacteria strains that cannot be killed by the current arsenal of antibiotics has become a public health threat worse than AIDS. You get it? In fact, in a meeting of the American Association of the Advancement of Science, even back far as 1994, scientists there announced that they see mankind heading, quote, nothing short of a medical disaster. End quote. Folks, I don't know about you, but it's just me, but the world has been filled with sickness, disease, and pestilence like never before. Exactly like Jesus said would happen.